Hi, this is Alan Fabian. As we all know, we're in a time of reset in the world, and reset can mean a lot of different things. One, it can mean resetting things back to way they want to the way they were before the reset began. A lot of people are hoping for that things will just go back to the way they were. And however, there's a different kind of reset that only God does. This kind of reset resets things back to his order, back to the way he designed them to be, so that the curse that operates in the earth that came from God is removed, the causes of that curse are removed, and the earth is able to be full of his blessing. I believe that we're in one of those times where we're making the transition from the world system into God's kingdom system of blessing. That's a hard transition on any terms, on any levels, because it means we're leaving something that we're familiar with, something we're accustomed to operating in, and we're transitioning into something we only know by idea, not by a full experience of. It's something that involves not only our heart, but it involves everything around us. And most importantly, it involves our lives, our families, and the very foundation, economic foundation of how we live our lives. Now, I wanted to share with you today a situation that happened to me just a couple of hours ago. And it's a situation that uh, changed as this coronavirus changed. Because, as some of you know, I was planning to be in the country of Suriname in South America at this time. We began to make those plans in the middle of January before we even knew really what coronavirus was. And then we made preparations and bought tickets for those plans back in February. So you can guess as we got into March that I began to wonder whether this trip was ever going to happen. Then a couple of weeks ago, it finally became known that everything everywhere was shutting down and this trip wasn't going to happen. Well, as part of my preparation for this trip, because you see, I was going to Suriname by invitation to help train people in that country on how to use the shofar strategically. Suriname is a small country on the northern tip of the South American continent, but it's a gateway country in many ways. It's a country that has experienced all kinds of corruption at very high levels, and it's a country that's been waiting and has found itself at the threshold where things need to be completely reset. Otherwise, it just simply goes down the black hole of the world system. And part of the way that this reset was going to, catalyst for it was going to be the training of people there in using the shofar strategically. So in the month of February, while I was in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, I bought 25 shofars from a friend of mine there who produces some of the best shofars in the world. And I had bought them, brought them back home to the US, and had kept them in my bag in anticipation of my trip to Suriname. And the plan was that when I got to Suriname, I was going to just sell them back to people at the price that I paid for them, which was a very good price in Kuala Lumpur. Well, when the trip canceled, I realized I wasn't going to be able to take those things. And so I told the lady there to have the people to return the money to the people that they had prepaid for the shofars and just wait till the time when I might come. Then we began discussing about how we could do a training now using the Zoom platform like I'm using with you today. Well, at that point, an idea came to my mind. Why don't I go ahead and ship these shofars to you, to Suriname, and then we could train them through Zoom. So today I went to the store, the FedEx store, to ship these shofars to Suriname. Now, Suriname is pretty far away. Um, it's on the northern tip of South America. It's kind of a remote country from the standpoint of how you access it. a normal flight there from Dallas Fort Worth involved about 40 hours of flight time and 3 or 4 stops along the way. So you can see it's not the easiest place to get to. And so it's not the cheapest place to ship to. Well, I had already told my friend that I was sending these shofars to her, figuring I'd be able to send them fairly inexpensively, and that I was just going to give them to them, that they weren't to collect money. I was just wanting to bless them with these shofars. They could receive them and they could use them to bless others. So we were already agreed that that's what we were going to do. And so when I took the shofars to the FedEx store today and they packed them up, they told me the price, and the price was, again, the same price as it cost me to buy the shofars to begin with. So it was doubling my expense. Well, at that point, I stepped back for just a moment and began to think to myself, do I really, this is expensive shipping. Do I really want to do this? Is this really what I need to do? In the middle of it, I heard the Lord say, go ahead and send them. So I sent them, and I spent that extra money, knowing that now this would become a second part of the blessing I was forwarding to them. Well, I had, like anybody else, we're at times when we want to think more conservatively because the needs and expenses are different than they are at any time. But I knew that this is what the Lord was saying I should do. So I sent it. And I got in the car and we began to drive to an area, the Beulah Center at Glory of Zion, where Mindy was going to put some of her pottery in a kiln. And while I was there, I received a message from a very good friend in Cebu, in Sarawak, Malaysia. And the things that she shared with me were riveting. It was just an exciting thing to receive. However, at the end of the thing, at the end of her letter, she said that the Lord had told her that she was to send me some money. Now, that doesn't happen very often. And in these kinds of times, you sure don't want to expect something like that to happen. And it's nothing I asked for or required. It's what the Lord had told her. And so she said she wanted to send me the amount. The amount was the exact amount that I had used to send to 15 minutes before, 30 minutes before, to send these shofars to Suriname. So you can see immediately making a decision about sending the horns to Suriname at a cost that didn't really want to cover, but the Lord said to send it. He covered it through my friend. So the blessing I was extending to Suriname, that blessing was now being extended to me from Sarawak. I was sending it to Suriname, and Suriname was going to spread it. You see how God was multiplying the blessing. Well, then while I was sitting there and responding to these things to my friend who wrote from Sarawak, I had 2 other things happen at the same moment. At the same time, Chuck Pierce walked up. He was just out of the office. There's very few people at Glory of Zion right now because of things. And he was out taking just a little short walk to get outside. And while he was there, he asked me to write something for a book he's preparing. And he said that he would be glad to pay me for that. He wanted to pay me for it. He was offering it to me so he could pay me for it, basically. And so it was interesting. Even at that same moment, there was another source of provision come in from out of nowhere. Nothing you could expect. But I was in place with this because when the Lord said, send the horns to Suriname, I did it. I didn't calculate the cost, though I did. I knew what the cost was. But what I calculated instead, or what I responded to instead, was what the Lord was saying. Well, even at this point, while I'm still writing on my phone, Chuck has left, I'm writing to my friend in Sarawak in response to what she had written to me. All of a sudden on my radio, from my phone going to my radio in my car, a song came out from Elton John. Now, again, I love listening to Elton John, and I've downloaded many of his songs. This was the one, though, that's particularly meaningful to me, okay? Because it's his song, I'm Still Standing. I'm going to share this song with you in just a minute, but it's a different kind of worship song. Usually in worship, what we're doing, we're usually um, bowing down or offering ourselves up to God and singing things to God. And they're like love songs. But you see, there's another kind of worship song that takes place at the moment that you're trying to make a break from an old system, or at a moment when an enemy's trying to attack you, and you're writing at that moment, you're thinking to yourself, I don't know if I'm ever going to survive what's just happened. See, we're at one of those moments right now. I can remember a number of years ago when I was first at this moment was around 2003, 2004. We went through very difficult times financially because we were going through a very significant reset in our own lives. And we were just attending Glory of Zion at that point, though I had already been 20 something years in ministry around the world. We were no longer in ministry at that point because we were waiting for God to reset everything. We weren't doing ministry. I was actually working on houses, and my wife was doing some of her art. So in this time where there was very little provision, but provision was there. One of the things that Chuck Pierce used to say, because at that point in our congregation of Glory of Zion, he would ask, how many of you have unpaid bills and are going through difficult financial times? And at that point, there would be somewhere between 40 to 60% of the people who would raise their hand. And at those in those times, Mindy and I were some of those who raised our hands. But one of the things that Chuck used to say, he would say, you need to stand up and you need to say to the enemy, you need to say to the world system, something like this. You say to that thing, listen, if this is, you brought all these things against me, and yes, I'm at a place I haven't been before, but know this, I'm still standing. See, the fact that we're still standing here shows us, demonstrates to us and those around us that system that we've identified and trusted on, and that has done, in a sense, failed us greatly because it brought us into a curse. We say to that system, you might try anything you want, but I'm going to remain standing because my God will bring me through. I could remember going through that period. There was a point in time that was particularly difficult. My children were of the age where things are the most costly and so forth, and things were happening, and we had gone through our own series of adversities. And I told the enemy, I said, if that's all you got to throw against me, I said, you're in trouble because I'm still standing. You see, that's the testimony in this hour. As we go through the resource, remember you're still standing. The enemy will try to convince you. He'll lie to you. He'll predict the future to you. He'll put people around you who will echo these things so that you think you won't be able to stand. But here's the reality. If you're standing today, okay, and you move with the Lord, when tomorrow becomes today, you'll still be standing. This is a time to declare that we, as people in covenant with our God, as people who are listening to our God and moving with Him, regardless of what might come our way, what the enemy or the world system might throw at us at this time, because we know our God, because we're moving with Him, and because of His work on our behalf, we'll still be standing. So this particular song by Elton John is a different kind of worship or love song. It's Elton John speaking to a former lover who has jilted him and hurt him, and he's angry from it, but he's moved on. And he wants that former lover to know that in spite of how that lover treated him, it didn't ruin his life. He's still standing and he's coming out ahead. So I encourage you, as you listen to this song, as you see the words, and it refers to you, when it speaks to you, you speak that you to the world system. You speak it to the enemy. And when Elton John, in those words, when he speaks about things that pertain to him, you see him pertaining to you. This is a time to declare and to dance to a sound that says you're still standing, regardless of what the world system and the one who formed that world system throw at you. We are a people who are still standing. So listen as I play the song. You can never know what it's like. Your blood like when it freezes just like ice. There's a cold and lonely light that shines from you. You'll wind up like the wreck you hide behind that mask you use. And did you think this fool could never win? Well, look at me, I'm coming back again. I got a taste of love in a simple way. And if you need to know while I'm still standing, you just fade away. Don't you know I'm still standing, better than I ever been. Looking like a true survivor, feeling like a little kid. And I'm still standing after all this time, picking up the pieces of my life without you on my mind. I'm still standing, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm still standing, yeah, yeah, yeah. Once I never could have hoped to win. You're stopping down the road and leaving me again. The threats you made were meant to cut me down. And if my love was just a circus, you'd be a clown by now. No, I'm still standing better than I ever did. Looking like a true survivor, feeling like a little kid. I'm still standing after all this time. Looking up the pieces of my life without you on my mind. I'm still standing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm still standing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Still standing better than I ever did. Looking like a true survivor, feeling like a little kid. I'm still standing better all this time. Picking up the pieces of my life without you on my mind. I'm still standing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. 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 I'm still standing. There you go. Now is the time to declare I'm still standing. Declare it to the enemy. Declare it to the world system. Declare it to everything that's lying to you about your future today. The world system and the financial system of the world looks like it's collapsing on itself, but we're still standing. Our God is still standing. And as long as we stand with him, he stands with us.